Good morning, everyone. This is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. I am going to make a video for you today, and it's something that has sort of been in the back of my head for quite a while. And it is based on something I never really planned on when I started this hobby. I have rescued, adopted, purchased many diamonds in the rough over the years. I've gotten sewing machines in carrying cases, I've gotten them in cabinets, and very often I get things that come with them, and some of them are fairly obvious. But I wanted to go through here because I think that some of you, when you come across a machine, you may be getting it from the original owner who can no longer use it, or you could be getting it from an estate sale, or maybe it's one of their relatives and it was left to them. Keep in mind how long ago some of these machines were made, and some machines have been handed down through multiple generations. Whatever the case is, there's actually a little curation that I started thinking about one day. And as I mentioned to you in some of my other videos, I always keep whatever comes with the machine. Sometimes I don't even get a plug. I get the head of the machine. You see the necky here. This is the head, the actual chassis and body of the machine. And that may be everything you get, but it may be worth getting and restoring regardless. And sometimes you get lots of things. You get all kinds of things. Some of them, many of them go with the machine, and some of them are unrelated. And I thought this was kind of a cool way to talk about vintage sewing machines as time capsules. And they're time capsules not just because of the machine, but because of all the things that you might find with them when you become the new owner of that machine. Now, sometimes people will be selling a machine, and if it's not the original owner, as I mentioned before, it's really important that you ask, were there any other sewing supplies? You can use the word notions or accessories, but a lot of people, if they don't know anything about sewing or sewing machines, they may not really know what you're talking about. Were there any sewing related supplies? Always ask this question, because very often people would like you to have them, but either they forget that their ancestor or their relative had them, or they're not even sure what they are, or they forget. They're in a busy time of life, they're trying to go through stuff, clearing out stuff. So, when someone is selling you a machine, you want to kind of sort of jog their memory to make sure that are there anything, you can even have a bobbin with you and say, hey, were there any bobbins with this machine? Because as all of you know, I really encourage you to get vintage bobbins. Well, there are many people who don't sew, they don't even know what a bobbin is, and they'll say, no. But if you have one in your pocket, ask them, say, hey, do you have anything that looks like that? Or maybe one of the other style bobbins. It's like, oh yeah, So you want to help people help you when you're getting a machine, a vintage machine that is new to you. Now I'm going to go through and show you a little collection of things I've gotten over the years. One of the things that I do is when I sell a machine, I always go to my customer and offer them the things that came with it. And many times they say, well, no, I don't really need any of that stuff. And I think it's kind of a shame. So I've held on to many of these items because they represent a lot of the history of the generations that have gone before us. And I find that I have a hard time letting go of some of them. And I don't know how all you feel, but it makes me not so much want to keep them for my own use, but I may offer them in the future to a customer who really likes this, who wants the provenance. That's an old unused word today, the provenance, the history and the heritage, not only of the machine itself, but you're getting a little tiny window into the life of a person who would have used, or many people who would have used these sewing machines, depending on how old they are. So anyway, I'm going to go through and show you some things I found interesting. There's a lot of stuff, but these are things that I thought were of particular note that you might come across, and in the comments, please let me know if you come across other things too. But I'm going to kind of go through quickly and kind of show you some of these items and see what you think. See what you think about these. And sometimes you will get paperwork. At the end of the video, I'm going to have paperwork that's very interesting reflection of the history of the machine and the history of how we used to buy things. So in this little stack here, this is something that you might have seen. In fact, many of us do the same thing. If you were to buy a new appliance, it usually comes with warranty information. and a how-to brochure. And you know, if it's a refrigerator, a lot of times we keep this stuff. We don't necessarily look at it unless something goes wrong with the appliance. But this is a warranty. Now, the reason I'm showing this to you, this is not a surprise that it's here, but this was a warranty agreement that was offered by Singer. And by the way, many of these accessories I'm showing you did not come with this little necky. Some of them did, but this is kind of a broad spectrum of my collection. So this is an example form. This is not an actual person, but it shows that Singer Service Maintenance Agreement covering service and parts during the life of the agreement. This is an example, and I don't know what the year was on this one. Well, actually, it says expires 91, so this is from the 90s. But service agreements were actually nothing new. One of the justifications for Singer being able to be a viable business, even though their home sewing machines typically really didn't wear out if they were cared for, is in addition to a growing population where you had growing markets for sewing machines, one of the things that would happen is Singer, of course, would service their machines, and they employed the people who did the servicing. And so much as you would find today with things like restaurant equipment or any kind of commercial equipment that's used in business, very often the company that manufactures and sells the product also services it. And that's part of how they make money and sustain their business, which is with home consumer items. Unfortunately, that's sadly not the case anymore. But anyway, again, this would not surprise you to see this, but this was from the 90s, but you could even see these going way back into the past. Now, of course, today a lot of our instructions come online. These are manuals, not for the machine, but how to use your accessories. Today you might get, well, I don't know, you might get a PDF file in addition to paper. But again, these things are things many of you will see when you are going through your sewing machine, the little pile of things that have been left with the machine that someone hands to you. Sometimes it just comes to you in a big bag, or it might be well stored. You just never know. And of course, here's the manual for the BCJ. If you get a machine without the manual, do not panic. Very often you don't have to get the paper copy. You can get electronic PDF copies. You can get them online. Sometimes they're free. Sometimes they have a cost, but it's not super high. Sometimes you're going to get a manual like I got in this Necky with this BCJ. This is not the manual to this machine. I have the manual to the machine as I just held up and showed you, but for some reason there was a whole nother manual. This is to another Necky model. This is in the BU, the fancier model. I don't know if this sewing machine owner had one of these at one time. Very often people who sew, friends and family members will say, hey, I have this manual I don't need. Would you like it? What's it to? Oh, it's to a Necky. Oh, sure, I'll take it. And, they did just like we do. Some of us have all kinds of things in our possession, and we sometimes, when we move and we go through our things, we're like, why do I have this? Now, sometimes you will see manuals, particularly the old ones, that the manual is still good, but there's no cover. And that's okay. This is to a Singer 66 Red Eye, and you know this because you can actually see the design. The 66 is one of Singer's earliest models. This would have been a Treadle. In fact, it's being shown. Let's see here. Wanted to see if they showed a picture of it in its table. But this would have been very likely, in fact, you can tell by the belt, this would have been for a Treadle machine. The cover's gone, but the manual's still fine. And then you see on the back, you see a lady looking into the mirror at the wonderful fashion and clothing that she has created. Now, sometimes you will see this. I found this in a collection of sewing things. The 221, of course, is the very iconic Singer Featherweight. It's just a cover. There's no actual manual in here. Featherweight manuals can be had for free, the digital versions, and you can also get them. If you want a paper copy, you can get new paper copies that people have printed, or you can even get vintage ones on eBay if you so desire. So, With Necky, in this particular, all the companies did this type of thing. But of course, you would open your manual. This is a promotional manual, and hey, in case you want a more expensive Necky, we've got those too. And all the great, awesome things you can do with your manual. I'm not going to read this to you, but you can see, they're promoting things, and we are all marketed to today, in much the same way. You will see here in the center, there's the Supernova. It would have been the newer model, but then the Nora and the Esperia, if I pronounce that correctly. Those models were based on the earlier Necky BUs, but they were still in production. And then you will see this. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit later about, I have another piece of literature with cabinets. I'm going to do a video in the future on sewing machine cabinets. That does not sound like a very exciting topic, but to me it is, and I'll hopefully be able to explain why when I do the video. But you can see all of the choices you would have had, and by the way, these were all extra. What you got with your Necky was, of course, you see here, you see it in the little carrying case, looks like a suitcase. That's what you got, that was included. But if you wanted a stool, if you wanted any of these gorgeous tables, and they were gorgeous, you had to pay extra, and they weren't cheap, but I'll be going into that in a future video. Let's see. Now, a lot of times you will see, and I mentioned this in my video on bobbins, you will see bobbins. Now, these bobbins go, this particular Necky, the little BCJ that you saw in the opening of the video, it uses class 15. If you ever see a bobbin like this, remember, this is a class 15 bobbin. Now, the later ones have lots of holes in the sides of the rim, and they're also fine. So just keep that in mind. These are class 15 bobbins. They just may look a little different to you if you're not used to seeing them. And then we have, this is silica gel. Someone had this in their cabinet, I guess, to prevent moisture. It looks like it's been around a long time. I don't know how effective it is, but it's still there. You never know what you're going to find, to paraphrase Forrest Gump. You just don't know what you're going to get. This is a little hand, I don't know how it was worn. Maybe it was worn on the wrist. It won't fit on my wrist, but of course it's a pin cushion you held on your hand and you stuck pins into. Needles. Lots of times I find older needles. Now, seeing needles in a pack unopened is one thing, but I often see them like this, and I don't know if people used them and then when they got dull they saved them. Remember, some of the people from the vintage era, they had lived through depression and wartime shortages, and they did not throw anything away. My grandparents would not toss anything because they never knew. They had life experience that taught them that things can become scarce, and who knows if that's the reason. Now, before the advent of zigzag in sewing machines, where you could put a special button sewing foot on your machine, you had to still sew some things by hand. And so Singer had hand sewing needles because, again, you wanted to sew your buttons on, and you really couldn't do that practically with a straight stitch machine. If any of you know how, please tell me. It would be great to hear that. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing. This showed up in one of my videos, I think, as one of the video clips. This says Spaceship. I believe this is a brand, or was a brand, of needles, because of course it's a pack of needles. And it's got all this foil in here, and again it says rust-free. That's nice to know that your needles are rust-free. But again, this would have been sold, if you look at the picture, this is more like a Flash Gordon era. This is before we ever landed on the moon. So they were using science fiction as a way to talk about how modern their needles were. Now, one more thing about needles. This was found in a machine. It was in an old Treadle machine, and it was fascinating. Man, I didn't know what it was. It was a stack of paper envelopes, little ones, and they're all numbered. And one says Operation Grinding, Operation Packing, Second Pointing, Hardening, straightening or butt straightening, eye punching, that eye meaning eyelet, making eyelets for clothing, not punching someone in the eye. Don't misunderstand that one. First pointing and so forth. And I'm not going to read all these to you. So I open them up, and they're all collections of needles. And what this tells you is that, we often think that our ancestors couldn't do fancy sewing procedures because they didn't have modern computerized machines. But of course they did. In addition to all those sewing machine accessories that I've shown you in the earlier video, people had all kinds of methods and strategies, and they even had, this person had collected needles and put them organized in a certain way, so when they had a certain function that they needed to perform on a type of garment, they could do so, which I think is pretty clever. So our ancestors were really smart, and they could do quite a lot. It's amazing how clever they were, because they had to do all sorts of things with what they had, just like we do, only different things. So again, that's something you might see. You never know. Now, when I first saw this is a little box, and it says Carter's Midnight. When I first saw this, I thought, holy cow, are these sleeping pills? Because there's an expression if Carter's has pills. But Carter's, as it turns out on the back, was a brand of typewriter ribbon. Of course, this is not a shock or surprise. Of course you would see typewriter ribbon, because that was the way you did data entry back in the day. And this says, it even tells you what model it's for. It's for an Underwood 1/2 black and red correction medium. Looks like they have different cities where they had distribution. But I just think it's a nice, cool little box. And notice the theme again is sort of outer space. Like I say, I think of Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers type of mindset. Now, I showed you all one of these in the accessories video, and I'm showing you this to you again to remind you. You will see things when you get a machine. You will see items that look like this, and you think, well, why is all this stuff here? Remember, before zigzag, and people did not have home sergers, if you had to finish a raw edge, then you had to. And I just realized I have some linen hanging here behind the machine, and if you wanted to finish the raw edge of something, of any woven fabric, let's zoom in where you can actually see. You had to finish that raw edge one way or the other. And of course, people were taught that they could do that if they had a zigzag attachment. Now, I don't know if any of you have had success using these. Zoom in a little bit better for you, and maybe it will actually focus. You know that you've got to cover those edges. Today, again, many of you will use home sergers, and of course you do have the zigzag capability in your modern sewing machines and the vintage machines that came with it. But again, many of you have experienced this. If you've ever gone to buy anything that was a sizable investment, perhaps it was a car. You went to the car dealer and they said, well, you want this, don't you? This is extra, but it would be, your new car would be awesome if you had this. Well, the same thing happened with sewing machines. And many times, as I mentioned, you don't always see a lot of wear with these devices, because people, you'd go to the dealer and they would teach you how to use it, and they always made it look so easy. The zigzag attachment is not the easiest thing to use, especially when you're doing curves. It's a bit of a wonky device, very well made. The quality is great, but now we understand why when Necky introduced zigzag to home sewing machines, it was a huge deal. Now, this is an example of something that people purchase thinking, oh, I'm going to need this. This went to a Kenmore, and these are templates for buttonholes. It even includes the more rare eyelet template. And that was used for things like belts. But if you look closely, it was never opened. It's still stapled shut. And again, people would buy things with good intentions. Oh, maybe I'll make coats. But they didn't. They ended up doing something else. But again, we are all, as consumers, sort of subject to that ourselves. Now, sometimes you find things, and I mean they're really old. Talk about a time capsule. I bought a Treadle machine, and I'm restoring the machine now, and eventually I'll do a video on that machine because it is a bit unusual even for a Treadle. And you know, it's so funny. It's almost like ink pens that we keep, even though they've run out of ink, but we don't toss them. This is the old belt that was on the machine. I replaced it with a new one. But this is, I'm sorry, this is a remnant of a belt that the prior owner had kept. And then there was actually this package. You rarely see this. It's an original sewing treadle belt package from Singer. And it talks about their quality and all this, that, and the other. And it looks like they had taken this off, and it says used belt. I don't know why they kept a used one in there. Leather, of course, degrades over time, so I'm not going to use that. But I think it's a wonderful keepsake, and it shows you if you were treadling 100 years ago, you would have gone to a sewing dealer, and this is what you would have purchased. And you know, it's paper packaging. It's kind of ironic. This is a biodegradable type of packaging, which is kind of funny. We're going back to that now, trying to get rid of all the plastic we have in our lives. But again, this is a little time capsule. I think it's really neat to have. I will offer this to whoever purchases the Treadle from me, if they would like it, and if not, I will be the keeper of it until a future time. Now, I told you guys earlier in the video about cabinets. This little piece of paper is one of the most important things I've ever come across. It's a brochure. Now, it says Necky on it, but no matter what brand, Singer, White, Necky, any of them, they all had cabinets for the dealer to sell. These were very important sources of profit. Now, this is a piece. This is all I was given. It looked like someone had kept this. This is a brochure for the Necky BU. This is where you saw that user's manual. And I'll turn it over. You can see the other side. At last, it's a wonder. You know, it's like one of the wonders of the world here. But what I'm most interested in, again, you see all these embroidery techniques. A lot of these things people would try, but you had to really practice to get good at a lot of them. But I'm going to talk in my cabinet video, which I will be doing as soon as I can get that one developed, about cabinets and pricing, because this little brochure was taken home sometime in the early, 1950, 51, and it looks like the customer had the dealer write down prices. These would have been retail prices. And I'm going to do a cabinet video, and we'll put these prices into a calculator to see how much they would cost today. I've already done a few of them, and I think it would shock you to think how much people paid. If you get a machine and you see one of these, you may or may not know what this is. They don't always look like this, but this is a needle threader. You put thread here, and then you point this little, I don't know if this is going to show up on camera. You point this little very fine wire towards the eye of the needle, and it's supposed to push the thread through the needle. It works okay. I have others I'll try to talk about in the future that I think work even better. But again, this is helpful because people have always developed issues with their eyesight and needed help threading a needle. The last few things I want to show you are paperwork that came with the machine, and I was so stunned that the paperwork was here. This paperwork came out of actually two different machines. Most of them came from a Singer 221 or Featherweight, and they are inspection tickets. These are basically, this is from Singer. Elizabethport, New Jersey was where the big original Singer factory was in the United States. And notice it has different functions: packed by, polished by, sewed in by. Of course, you would have to test it. Inspected by. And look here, we've got initials for sewed in, inspected, someone initialed packed. I can't really read this one up here. This is 19, this is, let's see if there's a date. I don't see a date here. There's a number but not a date on there. And then here's another one where it says inspection number. So one of the ways they used to ensure quality is the employees had to sign off on them. If there was a problem and a machine got sent back, they knew who to go to and say, hey, you know, what's going on the production line here? So I thought that was kind of a nice little piece of the history of, I'd never seen one of these before, but isn't that kind of fascinating to see how they kept up with keeping quality control back in the day? And I believe that particular featherweight, if I remember, was in the 1940s. And here's another one. This is from another singer, and it says inspected by. I don't know who SD was. Oops. And lastly, I've got some invoices here. This is from 1955. Someone went in and had a repair made, and they spent $3.50. That may not seem like much to us today, but you know, someone made a living charging $3.50 for a repair. 1955. Here it is, a payment. Someone was making payments. Now, I had a machine once, it was a Singer 185J, the little green Singer machine, and it had a repossession sticker on it. Someone had not made their payments on it, and it went into collections, and it had a red sticker on the undercarriage that I guess, so it couldn't be resold as new. But here you see someone made a payment. It looks like January 27th, 1942. This was during the war, Second World War. And someone made a payment on their machine. It doesn't actually have the amount of the payment, but kind of makes you wonder how long people used to make payments on these things. And I was able to make out the date on this. This is from 1946, and it says, check machine and repair, phone when ready. And you can still see where they wrote it, $3.10. And so again, this is what this really says in many ways is, you know, we used to have a culture where we used to take care of things. We would maintain things. Machines in those days required a lot more in terms of maintenance. And the fact that they could be maintained. I've shown you guys before places where you see access screws and panels so you can get into a device to either maintain it, you know, lubricate it, clean it, or even get it repaired. And this mentality has largely gone away, at least for consumer items. But I wanted to show you this because, you know, you get a little bit of a window. Many people would get these machines and anything associated with them, and sometimes other things, they would keep there, and they kept them there their whole lives. And this is more of a reflection than anything else. It's almost like a mirror. It tells us the way we used to buy things, the standards that our ancestors had for quality, and they had expectations. And you didn't have to be super wealthy to be able to afford nice things. You had to pay for them. They took a while to pay off, and then you cared for them. And that was sort of the approach that they had. So again, I'm going to be doing a video in the future on cabinets, and I'm anxious to talk to you about the cost and the pricing, because I think that we often don't appreciate what a good quality consumer item should cost. And you know, if you were to build this Necky, this little junior Necky, which was not the top of the line model, you know, it's a straight stitch machine. It does one stitch and it goes backwards, and that's what it does. And it does it beautifully, but it doesn't have any fancy features, no computerized buttons, and it would cost thousands of dollars to reproduce at this quality level. But here it is. It's, you know, about 70 years later, and I'm going to restore it, and it's going to run again. So if any of you have anything to share about what you have found that was included with the machine that you got, you might have found diaries. You may have found recipe books. Who knows? I did not know that the Singer Company once Made, and it says here, made, sold, and serviced by Singer. Apparently Singer was in the vacuum cleaner business. And that's not surprising either. Today you still have sewing and vacuum centers that will service things like vacuum cleaners and sewing machines. But put down in the comments there, folks, anything that you have found that you think is interesting. And I would encourage all of you, when you get things like this, if you can keep it with the machine, either in a box or in the table if you have one, it's part of the history. It's part of the provenance of where the machine has been. And trying to imagine all the people and all the projects and lives that have touched the machine before you got it. And now you're the next person to take care of it. So anyway, this is something that I never saw coming. It kind of touched me. I thought it was just a wonderful little time capsule from the past. And I'd be curious to hear what you all have found. And feel free to share that. And like I say, subscribe to the channel, and any of the new videos coming up, you can click on the little bell symbol and it will tell you when I've got a new video up. Thanks for watching, everyone.